My name is Mary Sun. I'm a second-year medical student here at Sinai, a co-founder of the Diversity Innovation Hub and part of its design team. I'm so excited to introduce today's keynote speaker and to welcome him back to Sinai, which is actually where he completed his residency training in dermatology. Dr. Dhaval Bhanusali is an incredible example of innovation in medicine. He is the founder of multiple digital health companies, a pioneer of new therapeutic techniques, and the medical mind behind Amazon's first ever global skincare line. Despite recently opening his own practice in Hudson Yards, Dhaval continues to serve as a key advisor to major commercial players in skincare and is always working on new ideas to push the field forward. He has no shortage of accomplishments, but what I find most inspiring is his simple ethos: just do the right thing. Every one of his ventures is focused on improving patient access to dermatologic therapies without sacrificing care quality. I have seen him work tirelessly on behalf of patients and providers around the globe and really can't think of a better person to speak about how medical trainees can pursue social good through innovation. As a brief reminder, there will be a Q&A with Dr. Bhanusali after his talk. That session will be moderated by Ted Obi, who is a fellow medical student and a co-founder of the Diversity Innovation Hub. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming my mentor and friend, Dr. Dhaval Bhanusali.
Can you guys hear me? Am I coming up? Perfect. All right. So this is fun. I have to give a talk in front of 800 dermatologists next week. That will not be fun. But this I enjoy. I am a Sinai grad, as Mary mentioned, and it's kind of fun to come home. I mean, I still volunteer here. I still consider this part of me, but it's really nice to see a lot of change that's happened. My talk is Innovation in You, why you already have what it takes to succeed. The reason why I wanted to give this style lecture is, you know, when you give a talk, you can talk about anything, whether it's, for me, if I'm talking about skincare products or techniques or lasers, whatever it is. Innovation's different, because in a weird way, you can change how people think. You can rewire the little neurons that are firing. And when I was kind of putting this talk together, I started thinking about myself and what would I have wanted to hear? Because I was that kid in the back of the room. I was a kid in the back of the room. I was a med student. I got yelled at all the time. I think I saw Eric Liam's name up there. I don't know if he's here, but fantastic guy. He would always tell me, he's like, what are you talking about? You're all over the place. And I appreciate him because he was one of the few people that supported my crazy, innovative, bizarre mind. And in medicine, it's interesting. We're always told to go one foot in front of the other, straight ahead. But the interesting thing about medicine is that you only can see so many people every day. There's a lot of people out there that you can't see, and you have to start thinking about those people. We are privileged to be doctors. I mean, honestly, healthcare is changing so fast. A lot of it's scary. Being a physician in this kind of firestorm right now, it is a little bit scary. But I think physician-led care should always be their primary objective. And similarly, I think physician-led innovation should really dictate how healthcare goes. So a little bit about me. I'm just like you guys. Undergrad in med school at Michigan State. They're doing a lot of cool, innovative stuff over there. I speak with their dean probably every day at this point, and I'm very proud of what they're building. But Michigan State is a very kind of blue-collar, non-innovative place, and it was a struggle, very honestly. It was very difficult to try to think outside the box. And it was okay, because some of those experiences kind of help you later in life, help you kind of figure out what you're doing and why you're doing it. I did my residency here at Sinai, St. Luke's Roosevelt, before it was acquired, and I do appreciate my experiences with the Sinai team. I think, you know, there's a lot of bigger thinking here. I kind of joke, but this is like the hub of the world. I mean, it's New York City. Healthcare kind of begins and ends here, and so it was really cool to be kind of part of this renaissance period and early in my career have it be shaped here. I'm now a voluntary here. I'm also in private practice. As mentioned, just opened up a new office. And just like everybody in this room, I'm a dreamer. And so my mom is here in the audience. She yells at me all the time. She tells me I'm crazy. I'm sure all your loved ones say the same thing. It's okay. That's fine. I always like throwing in random quotes because I'm a little bit cliche, but one of my favorite ones is, if it doesn't exist, you should build it. And that's a lot of the stuff is, I think it's a mindset you should take with anything. There's a lot of gaps out there, and it's our job as physicians, as med students, residents, whatever it is, to figure out how to solve those problems. So I'm going to take you a little bit through my personal journey and then kind of try to spin that into what I think could be helpful for a lot of the people in this room. So for me, it started actually in med school. I did a little bit of biotech work, but really in residency, I call this, this was a fun phase. I wanted to be a venture capitalist, and I didn't have any money. And I was like, all right, so how do I scam the system and become a venture capitalist with absolutely $0 in the bank account? And so it was actually kind of fun. Through some friends, serendipitously, I met a guy who he owned a development firm. And I didn't have any money, so I'm like, look, I can't offer you anything, but do you know anything about healthcare? And he said no. And so I said, look, I'll bring you some healthcare stuff. Maybe you can build it. If you can build it at cost, maybe we can do like an equity swap with these companies and we can be part of it. Maybe we can be part of the solution. Thankfully, he made a lot of money doing other things, so he took my idea and said, okay, and we got to start building some fun projects. We even built some things for profit, which actually ended up funding some of the other projects we ended up doing. But it was really cool. We got a little bit of press with this thing. It went a bit farther and wider than I expected, but it kind of set the stage where it looked like you can actually do something. And it was interesting just to meet people and learn how startups work, how people think differently outside of medicine. In medicine, again, we're very kind of like black and white, and we don't see the colors sometimes, and innovation's only color. And I think it's kind of cool to, again, to start thinking a little bit different about how we do things and see things. So then my first year in practice, so again, my mom's here, so she always taught us do the right thing. And so if you guys remember, there were some slashing cases in New York City. I was always taught you don't do things for media and press, you just do it because you're supposed to do it. And so I did a pro bono case on a poor girl she was slashed across the face a couple blocks from my office. But innovation is not just tech companies. Innovation is how you practice medicine, right? And so, traditional paradigms in dermatology, you laser them in 6 months, you hope for the best, you laser them a couple other times, you see how it goes. I have a 22, 23-year-old walking around with huge gashes across her face. I can't wait 6 months, right? So I got to figure it out. So I looked at all the literature, kind of what was piling up there. I was like, is there something there? I had an old laser. It wasn't the newest or anything like that. I was like, okay, how do I push the limits of this laser? How do I get her better? So we started looking at different things. I talked to a lot of doctors around the world, and we came up with a new plan to treat her. Within 3 months, you couldn't find the scars. And again, we don't do this thing for press or media, but one of the outlets that initially had covered it followed up with her because there was a few more slashings, and they couldn't find her scars. And for whatever reason, they covered it. It went to Daily Mail and People Magazine and all these places. And just like that, I had a name in the field, and it was, for me, it was a little bit crazy. But that was the beginnings of this whole innovation thing. Like, why am I doing everything like somebody else? Like, I should do it how I think we should do it. So this is an example of the kind of cases I see today. So I do a lot of different diverse cases in my office. My job is to get people better. But again, innovation is not just in the tech office or with my programmers or anything like that. So I have this gentleman. It took 10 dermatologists to find me. Derm and plastics and burn surgeons. And nobody could get him better. So this before and after is literally after 2 treatments. So we still have probably 3 or 4 treatments to go. I'm going to play this quick little video. And really it was fun because I think, and I'll get to it in a little bit later, but I think when we share things like this, people notice. And it might not be for your own worth or anything like that, but I think people out there might start seeing things that might inspire them to go get help or things like that. Everything I do in life, I always ask why. Why do we do it? What is your why, right? And that's a big theme of everything. I mean, tech companies, money is the least interesting thing out there, right? But it's impact. Impact is always the most interesting thing. And for me, with this gentleman, let's see if we get some sound on this thing or not. But I had a job to do. We had to figure out how to get him better. So I use settings that nobody on earth probably would have used, but we're getting them better. And I apologize, it's a little bit graphic. So what we started doing with him is, okay, so I'm drilling these holes into his arm, right? It's pretty crazy. But what do you do when you drill holes into somebody's arm? You have a little ability, like a little scoop to deliver medication, right? So instead of just doing what everybody else does, I said, look, let me start delivering some medications into his arm, right? And so the results you see here after 2 treatments, most people would take 10, 15, 20 treatments, maybe they'd never get it. But because we were kind of using a different approach to how we were thinking, we started getting him better. So before he couldn't move his arm, now he has full function of his arm after 2 treatments. And again, I apologize there's a bunch of doctors in this room, so I'm not too worried about it. But this is how we start thinking about things. So then after that, life got a little crazy. I'm going to be honest with you. Derm is crazy, bizarre world. We do a lot of weird press and media stuff. I always joke I live 2 lives. I live my help the world, tech, entrepreneurial mind, and then I have this other part of it, which is kind of a little bit more showy, and I always feel kind of embarrassed to do it, but this is part of our, it's part of our job. One of the fun things I think was really interesting is I got to host an event with Nicole Kidman for the Emmys for Neutrogena, one of the global dermatologists. It was interesting for different reasons. So most people are like, oh, this is cool, like this is, Hollywood. The thing for me that was really interesting was I got a bunch of emails from people in India, because the story went a little bit farther and wider, again, than I thought. And they're like, we would have never thought one of ours would be with one of theirs. And it was really interesting, because you don't think about that stuff, right? Because what is beauty, traditional Hollywood beauty, all that stuff, it's a little bit different. And now as the world kind of shifts and diversity, again, we're talking about diversity and innovation, the world is shifting a little bit. And it was really interesting. That was, for me, it was pretty powerful. I thought about that, because again, this is cool. It was cool to tell my family that, I got to do this, but then you start thinking about impact, and how does that make other people realize that what they're doing is normal, and what they can do is normal, and what they dream is normal. We got to meet lots of fun people. Martha's over there. Martha's like Miss Mount Sinai, so we work on some fun projects together. She's a great, great friend. And I also joke, I think I'm the only guy who's ever gotten DJ Khaled's like major keys for medical success. A fun story, we had Damon John, we've met a few times, and this is for all, again, the med students and residents in the room and young doctors. So I asked him, very honestly, so is it true that you can only be good at one thing, and you have to put your heart and soul into one thing, and that's the only thing you can do, and that's the only way you'll be successful? And he just laughed, and he's like, look, if you think that the people on Shark Tank did one thing, you're crazy. We screwed up a million things. One thing happened to hit, and everybody likes us, but like we failed over and over and over and over again. And I thought that was really important, because I failed a lot. And so it was kind of nice to have that kind of added boost to be like, okay, it's okay, I can figure this out. So a little bit later on, I was fortunate enough to work with Amazon to launch their first skincare line. This was a little bit intimidating, because there's about a billion people or so on Amazon. So the kind of rule was, if I screwed it up, you would know about it. And I was a bit terrified. I didn't want to end up in the first page of the New York Times for screwing something up, but it worked out pretty well. And eventually, I opened up my office in Hudson Yards, and we joke, we call it the spaceship, because I do all these crazy things. My staff is here today with us, and they know I like to create. If techniques don't exist, we'll make them. If there's no blueprint for something, we'll figure it out. It's been really nice to have my own practice, because we don't have to answer to anybody. If I have to comp things, I comp things. We do a lot of pro bono work. I love doing cancer reconstructions, things like that. They yell at me a lot for comping things, but it's, sometimes you have to realize that it's not just money. Again, it's what you do and how you do it. But I would say my office is an innovation hub, because again, we do things that most people don't think about. But that's okay, because our job is to become doctors. All right, so all this was great, and there's a bunch of humble brags in there, so I apologize. But there's a point to all this stuff, right? So you start going through this process. You have all these cool events and things start happening. And then you start wondering, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is press why I do things? Is money why I do things? No, it's impact. Impact is always the most important thing. So I started thinking about a bigger picture. So my father told me this, he told me this advice a long time ago that I'll never forget. We were in India. Every other year, he used to go to India to treat patients. He's an orthopedic surgeon. There's no medical professionals there or anything, so people would line up for days to see him, and him and his friends would see hundreds of people. And I was like, look, I want to do this. This is super cool. Like pro bono work, like let's do it. And he's like, no, don't do that. He's like, there's 2 kinds of people out there. He's like, I'm a factory worker. I can help the people I see. These people will line up, and then I leave. And then what? He's like, think about the other way. He's like, go make $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, build a hospital, help millions of people. But don't just look like this, look like this. And it always resonated with me. So I think, sometimes, again, people chase money. I think it's more important to chase what you can do with money, because that's impact, right? And you have to start thinking that way, because if you chase money, I mean, it's one of those things that it's not hard to make money, right? You can just work a little bit harder, you can figure it out. But if you can change people's lives, that is really what this is all about. This is why we go to medicine. This is why we take that Hippocratic oath. This is why we get up every morning. And so I started shifting the thinking and thinking, what do I do? Why do I do it? So I looked at my own patients. I do a lot of scar work. I also do a lot of hair work. And so my hair patients are actually some of my most emotionally distressed patients. I used to be one of the global derms for Rogaine, and hair techniques out there are good. They're not great, but I had to figure out how to get these people better. They'd come from all over to come see me, and like, all right, you know what? Let's be innovative. Let's figure out how can we hack the formula and start figuring out things. I'm a doctor, right? So why do I stop at 5% minoxidil? Why can't I go to 6 or 7% minoxidil? If I want better penetration, I've learned in medical school that certain things like retinoic acid or salicylic acid can help penetration. Why can't I mix that in there? So it's about kind of piecing together what your knowledge base is and trying to figure out a solution. Because again, your job is to figure out solutions to problems. So all the patients you see here are my own personal patients. I love them to death. These are guys who failed everything under the sun. They magically started growing hair because they let me kind of experiment with them, which was fun. We had more and more people start coming in. And we're like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. And this was a gentleman who came in for, I think, a hair transplant evaluation. I'm like, hey, let's just try it. It's a little blurry, but if you look at the guy, he has a nice little fluff kind of growing in there. And that was in, I think, 3 months or so. So then more and more patients started coming in, and I was like, look, I can't see everybody. So I started talking to my colleagues, and I was like, okay, let's think innovatively. What can we do? So we built a tech platform that allows people to essentially compound whatever they want within safety boundaries for their own patients. So now this is in, I think, 1,000 plus offices. You get a little bit of national news, and I don't know how many before and afters I have from people I've never met before, and physicians also who use this stuff for their patients who are thankful for it. For me, this was just innovation. This is just, you have to solve problems, right? Again, you can't think about what's in front of you. If this are the only 3 options you have, start swerving a little bit to the other sides and start thinking about, okay, my knowledge base is there. How do I figure it out? So that's one thing. Hair is great, but then you start thinking about human beings and people. It's probably not as concerning as some of the other issues out there. So then I started thinking more. So some of you guys might know about this, some may not. Recently, the government sued a bunch of generic drug manufacturers. There was a lot of price collusion going on. They were essentially, in my own personal office, my favorite example, I had a patient with like a $15 cream I'd been seeing for years. It was all of a sudden $800. I was like, whoa, it's kind of crazy. I texted a couple of my derm friends, the same thing. And there was more and more medications that were skyrocketing in prices. And one of the things people don't realize is that that's not sustainable. We can write these prescriptions all day. People will pay them because they're desperate. But that's how the house collapses. We had to do something. So I took the same mentality. I'm like, wait, if I can do this for hair, why can't I do this for everything else? We started looking at compounding for basic steroids, for acne, for things like that. So we got a little bit more fun press, and it was pretty crazy. I got a chance to talk at the stock exchange about this idea, skin medicinals. So skin medicinals essentially creates a solution to a problem. We need to get patients better. Right? Again, were we chasing money with this? No. That was the last thing in my mind. I was hoping not to go bankrupt with this thing. But it's one of those things where you have to figure out how do you help those people. And innovation, I'm not by any means doing anything magical here. I'm like, okay, I understand some tech stuff. Let's figure out how to get these patients better. So then it goes to impact. So now we're in 2,100 offices. I think if I were to guess, by end of today, we'll probably be in 2,200 offices. 45,000 patients have gotten medications. The healthcare system saves about $300,000 a day. And I like everything, as Mary said, I like to do something fun with everything we do. So we donate a lot of money to nonprofits. So I wrote a check for $20,000 or $30,000, I can't remember exactly, last week for nonprofit work, for patient advocates and physician-led care. I think it's important to always, again, have a mission statement for what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because if you're building just to build, there's no direction, right? But when you start thinking about the cool things like that hospital idea, and the bigger picture, all of a sudden you get up a little bit earlier, you go to sleep a little bit later, and things just become a little bit more clearer in your brain. So other fun things we're working on, air health. So I'm building an EMR. It's in 50-ish offices, I think, right now, something like that. And that idea, I think EMRs are terrible. Honestly, I apologize to anybody from Epic that's here, but they're the biggest bane of everybody's existence. I had a simple question for an executive at an EMR company. I'm like, look, I have a 45-year-old Asian gentleman come in. I have $10,000, $50,000 a year biologics to choose from. Which one do I give him? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, how come I don't have that data? And he's like, well, we don't do that. I'm like, why don't you do that? Because think about how much money that costs the healthcare system. I don't have that answer. I can tell you 6 weeks how well somebody does with Caucasian skin, 12 weeks, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is. But I want real data. And so we essentially deconstructed the whole EMR and rebuilt it. And I want to empower physicians to be able to do it. The fun fact is I don't like making money off doctors, so we made it free. makes it a little bit more challenging to, we have other revenue ways of funding the system. But, you know, again, I always say honestly, our colleagues are our brothers and sisters. We don't want to exploit them. We want to empower them. I'm happy to take money from big pharma companies. They have enough of it. But, you know, it's one of those things where we can't just be complacent. We can't just be like, look, like, I'm just going to take this. That's not how innovators think, right? And the people in this room, the fact that you're in this room right now, you think a little bit differently. My job is to tell you it's okay to think differently. I got yelled at by everybody. Everybody in there told me I was crazy for all these things, and I probably am, to be super honest with you. But it's okay. Like, it's perfectly fine. We're doing other projects. We have a couple of fun skincare lines, some celeb lines we're doing. I'm working on a clinical trials project with Michigan State and a few other pharma companies. A lot of this stuff is great, but now the real reason why I'm speaking today is how can I help you guys take that same approach? It brings me to another topic. So one of my patients who I can say, because he Instagrams it all day long, but he wrote a book called New Power. He's the CEO of Lincoln Center, right, which is across town, great place. And the whole idea of New Power is things have changed, right? I'm young, like, let's be honest. There's probably some med students might be older than me, I don't know. And he told me that when they wrote this book, there was myself and a couple of our friends who are all in medicine, he thought about. Because influence is different in healthcare, right? Before, there are people who have been publishing for 30 years, 40 years on podiums and all those things, right? And he's like, look, I've been to those doctors. He's like, I interact with you way more than anybody else. And I didn't really understand, so I asked him why. He's like, look, your little circle on Instagram always pops up. And he's like, you're always doing something crazy. And he's like, let me ask you an honest question. How often do a normal person go see a dermatologist? I say once a year, maybe once every 2 years. And he's like, how often do your patients see you? I'm like, every 3 months or 4 months. He's like, how often do you catch late skin cancers? And I mean, knock on wood, but I can't remember the last time I caught something advanced. Everything is always in situ or really, you know, very, very. He's like, because people come see you. You interact with them without realizing it. Power is different. Influence is different. By using social media and different things like that, people are literally engaging with you all day long. He's like, I don't need to see a dermatologist. I see your stupid bubble on there. I'm like, oh, I got to go see him again. And any little mole, he comes and gets checked, right? It's something that we have to start considering. You have to start evolving with medicine, right? Don't be scared of all these things. Don't be, you know, I think in healthcare, I have to talk with the Michigan State Dean all the time. I think we're terrified of change because we're not controlling it. So control it. I think there's ample opportunity for us to be driving this change, but we have to do it the right way. Social media can be a very negative place, a scary place. Make it positive. I have a fun little thing where I'll give a 10% discount to any cosmetic procedure to anybody who tags me on their putting on sunscreen during the summer. Do I care about the money? No, but I care about the behavior that they're shifting and they're changing, right? We charge a decent amount of money for these cosmetic procedures, but at the end of the day, who cares? You know, at the end, I want my patients to get better. And so we start thinking a little bit differently. It's innovation, right? It's a different way of thinking, because what innovation really is just thinking a little bit different to solve a problem that's not solved. So another fun question. This was a pharma CEO, and this is for the young people in the room. So I was at a conference, and there was a big advertisement for a new drug. It was a terrible drug. I've written it 0 times. And I know the CEO very well. He used to be a mentor when I was a resident. So I asked him, I was like, hey, you wrapped a staircase. How much did that cost? And he was like, well, you saw that, huh? It worked. I'm like, no, I didn't write your prescription, but how much did it cost? So he said about $70,000. I'm like, so you spent $70,000 to put your name on, or your drug's name on a staircase in order to influence my behavior? And he's like, yeah, why? Why wouldn't I? And I'm like, I want you to think about that. He's like, well, what would you do with it? So I thought about it, and I was like, well, first I'd take $35,000, put it in my pocket as my consulting fee. And the other $35,000, I would draw little digital fences around the exhibit hall. And every single person walking in would get blasted with my ads for my drug. Because that's how 2019 is. That's how we consume information, right? My friends who are in skincare sales or other industries, that's how they think. In healthcare, we don't think like that. We should think like that. Think about how your patients are engaging with you, and you have to kind of evolve with them. So, anyway, all this stuff aside, now is the fun part. So this is kind of what I like to share, the lessons I've learned and what I think hopefully you guys can take back from this. So number one, just start. A lot of you guys have incredible ideas, start them. Worst that can happen is they don't work, and then you just do another one like me. I did like 8 billion different things. A few hit, a few didn't, but just start. Remember what separates you. So one of the number one questions I get emailed to me or calls or anything is, should I do medicine? Should I drop out of medicine and do tech startups or all that stuff? be a doctor. Your superpower is you're a doctor. You know things that nobody else knows, right? And like, there are people who go through MBAs and all these things, top of their class. They will never know what it feels like to be in a room with a patient and interacting with that patient. Think about that. That's your superpower, right? Don't give that up. If you want to do a year of residency and take a break, and fine, but finish and do it the right way, because we need you on both sides of it. The best innovators understand all different sides of the problem, not just, oh, I have a great solution to this problem and I'm going to bang this square block into the circle. That's not how that works. You have to understand that, and especially in healthcare, there is a color aspect to it. It's not black and white. Things that make great economic sense don't make great medical sense. I can't do something that my patients are going to get angry with me, or I can't make my staff angry and do something that implements, even if it saves me a couple bucks. Like, I have to think about everybody when I do it. Which goes to the next point. You don't need all these expensive degrees. If you want to do an MBA, do one. I'm cool with it. It's fine. They're expensive. But that's not going to change what you're capable of doing. It might organize your thoughts a little bit better. But I didn't do an MBA. I wish at some point I had time to do one, but you'll learn it, or hire somebody that has one. I mean, at the end of the day, I've worked with a ton of MBAs from top-notch schools. They're way smarter than I am, I'm sure. But I mean, would it be worth 2 years of your life to go and do it after doing all this medical training? I don't know, right? Innovate in real time. See what happens. Find the right partners. Figure it out. But if you want to do it, I'll always say do it. But I just don't think it's absolutely necessary. So despite what everybody tells you, you will be criticized. I was criticized, again, a lot. I still am criticized. But it's okay. Like I said, nobody has to understand why you're doing it, as long as you understand why you're doing it and what the purpose is. I think it's okay. I've had, again, I went to Michigan State. I'm friends with their dean. I had a lot of people at Michigan State telling me I was crazy and I shouldn't do this and all that and stuff. It's okay. Like, don't worry about it. People will criticize everything you do. If the sky is blue, they'll be angry. Like, it doesn't really make a difference. Find mentors who support you. So I think this Diversity Innovation Hub is amazing. I wish this existed when I was a med student or a resident, because this is what you need. You need your friends. You need people that support you. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. It's not easy. You need those people that you can call in the middle of the night to be like, look, this is what's going on. What do I need to do? And they will guide you. I've had many of those days, whether it was trying to get into derm residency, which is way too obnoxiously hard to get into these days, or trying to create some of these projects. Even with skin medicinals, I'll be very transparent. Every pharma company on earth wants to sue me to oblivion, and I know that, and it's okay. And I've had some threats and all these things come in. That's okay. I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I have a strong support system. I'm not terribly scared by any means, because at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? My favorite Wayne Gretzky quote, I don't really actually watch any hockey, but you got to skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. So again, in medicine, I always joke, but like even journals, every journal is publishing stuff that people have probably known for about a year or 2 years or so. I actually had recently a publication of mine get published that I finished 4 years ago and submitted. It's like, that thing has been outdated for years. So, think about the future of medicine. When you're creating a company or a project, think about 2025 or 2030. How do you think healthcare is going to be? How do you think people are going to interact with their doctors or their medical professionals? Build that. Because building what exists right now, that's not interesting, right? But figure out what people are going to be doing, and that's the rub, right? And if it doesn't exist, build it. If people think it's a crazy idea, it's crazy because nobody's done it before, so it's okay. Know your strengths and more so your weaknesses. So I don't actually, even though I've had hundreds and hundreds of programmers work for me, I don't know anything about programming. That's okay. Hire them. Figure it out. But you have to understand, again, you're a doctor. Understand what aspects you know really well. Delegate out the things you don't. And then use your mind. Don't do all these tasks that waste your time and all those things. Use your mind and use it the most efficient way possible. And take care of yourself, too, because I think a lot of times we burn out way too much. I've learned more recently that I need to take time off and take breaks. And my mom yells at me all the time about this stuff. But, you try your best and figure out, again, that support system is really important. There is no blueprint, so you have to create your own. So anything I've done, there was no Amazon line before I did it. I didn't know who to call the night before that thing was launching and be like, hey, if I screw this up, like my career is over. What if somebody has a reaction? Who do you call? Nobody knows what that kind of pressure is, right? With skin medicinals, I knew exactly when that article came out for Business Insider that every pharma company will circle my name and be like, look, we're going to watch this, because if this takes from our underlying profit margin, we're going at him. I knew it, and just like clockwork, when the company started growing bigger and bigger and bigger, I got a lot more phone calls and things coming in. it's okay. There's no, sometimes you have to figure out on the fly. That's why you're an innovator, right? That's why you think a little bit differently. Raising money is a very fun question. So I haven't raised any money for any of my companies yet. I've been on ad boards and all these things, and I've been on things, and I know some of the guys here have raised a lot of money. The one thing that happens when you raise money is somebody kind of owns you, for lack of better words. And I've seen CEOs fired and things that have numbers attached. So, hey, we'll give you $4 million, but your CEO is gone. And that's weird to me, because that's the person who put blood, sweat, and tears into it. You're a doctor. This is your career. Be very careful where you raise your money. Find the right partners. Again, I haven't done it probably because I'm really bad at taking criticism. So I probably want to be a good person for somebody to trust their money with. But you know, it's one of those things where we don't just take money to take money. You can find places. This innovation hub will probably be a great example of it. You know, finding big partners like a health system. I don't know if the venture part of this stuff is rolling. When I was a resident, I always asked Mount Sinai for money. They always said no. So hopefully now that you guys are a little bit better about it. But look for the right partners, because again, I rather take $1 from the right person than $2 from the wrong person, because this is your baby. If you're building something, you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into it, right? Understand that you have to see this thing through. Don't let somebody tell you what to do, right? Let somebody help you, because that's important. Always take help, but don't let them kind of define how you're going to be running things. And I've been in meetings where people, you know, without getting too into it, where financial people have said that in a weird way that if I get people better, they lose money, so why would they want that, right? And that's like a weird thought. Like, we're doctors. That's like the most bizarre thought. But at the end of the day, people sometimes invest to make money, right? Or actually, they always do. And so you have to, again, think about who you're partnering up with. And that's something, that's a conversation that doesn't really happen in medicine. So this is my please be cautious kind of urging. Support each other. So every one of the people in this room, again, you're on your own journey. You're here for a reason, right? Help the person next to you, help your friends. I've been on phone calls with God knows how many people, trying my best to support and help them. And they've done the same for me. So this is not there's no one-man success stories, right? It really takes a village to do this stuff. So support each other. If your company is doing well, introduce them to some people that helped you. If one of your friends' companies aren't doing well. If you have an idea and nobody's supporting it, it's okay. Look for the people that do support it. Those are the ones that you need. And then always think about your why. Again, why do you do things? So all these things, maybe outside of Amazon, but all the companies we've built, there's been a really good reason why we've built it, right? Again, I can't stress this enough. Money is easy to make. Don't chase that. Chase that impact, because at the end of the day, it's one of those things where you'll be so much more fulfilled when you realize that you're leaving some sort of legacy, whether it's in healthcare or even a single person's life. It's important. And this is my favorite dad quote. As you can see, I'm a big family guy, so I always like mixing these in. And this is what he told me after, an administrator at my old medical school told me that, look, you won't be able to do all this health. You just be a doctor. Like, that's enough, and that's fine. And he told me, let no one tell you what you can or cannot do. Instead, you let time show that your potential is limitless. And I will believe that for eternity. And it's not just me, it's for every single human being, because literally there is no ceiling on anybody. You will do whatever you want to do it as long as you believe you can do it. And everybody else will put whatever barriers and whatever limits they have onto you, and that's how they'll try to hold you back. But you'll be fine. You just have to believe in it. And again, you have to find the right people that believe in you as well. So for me, I'm always open to anything. Email me anytime if I can help with anything at all. I probably answer more on Instagram at this point, God knows, 2019, more than I want to, but we try our best. If I think anybody, if you don't get them the first time, just hit up a couple more times. I think that's how Mary and I connected. You know, at the end of the day, I come back here as a humble kind of servant to Mount Sinai. I'm deeply appreciative of the opportunity that I was given to do my residency here. Every single patient I see is because of this place and because of Michigan State, the place that took a chance on me. I always feel any success I have in life should be shared. And any opportunity I have, I also want to present it to people that I know and I care about. And so if I can help anybody in this room, anybody that you guys know, I will always do my best to help. Time sometimes gets crazy, but we will always work hard to do what is right. And so with that, that's all I have for today. I appreciate your time, genuinely and truly. And I think we have some questions too, right? Thank you. Sorry? You want me to hang over here? Or?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Obi. I'm a second-year med student at Mount Sinai and also a co-founder for DIH. Before we start with questions, I just want to thank you, Dr. Bhanusali, for a truly inspirational speech. Can you introduce me to Future? Is that possible?
You caught that one on there?
Yeah,
Really nice guy.
I got that. So Mary and Omar will be on either side. I just have 2 asks for everyone. If you have a question, please raise up your hand, and we'll get a mic to you. And 2, please keep your questions concise so we could have the program move smoothly.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. I said if you can please raise up your hand if you have a question, and we'll get a mic to you. And secondly, please keep your questions concise.
Yeah, thanks for your talk. It was amazing. Can you hear me? I just wondered, you talked about not taking money, being careful where you take money from. So how did you manage working with Amazon, which is big money?
So Amazon was, it was a kind of a dual, venture between both parties, I guess is the best way to put it. So financially it was kind of split around between a few different groups. But I think all of my companies, so that first thing I did was Health Digital. What I did is, the money I generated from there, I put it to my next project. The money the next project made, I put it to the next project, and so on and so forth. And it kind of became, I joke, it's like monopoly money, because it's not my normal day-to-day income is my office, right? But it was a little bit more pure, because I have a separate account that does only my tech and innovation, so that I don't chase the money. And I kind of keep it separate. But in a weird way, money is like the game part of it, right? It's a kind of keeping score. You obviously have to figure out ways to do it, but I think a lot of times it's again, if you have to raise money, raise money. If you have to bug your friends and family, bug them. I think if they believe in you, they'll put a little bit aside. And if not, just you have to save a little bit, right? And for me, my entire resident salary, I barely spent any of it. I mean, being in New York was not cheap, but I wasn't the guy who was, spending hundreds of dollars on dinners and stuff like that. I always kept it aside. I'm like, I want to build something great. And I will put this money aside, and every month I would put up X amount of dollars in a separate little kind of thing, and I always kept it. So then when I had to write that first big check where I was like terrified, it was okay. If it didn't work, no harm, no foul, but I figured out a way to do it the right way.
That was a great talk, thank you, and a great career arc. It seems like you were entrepreneurial very early on, and I guess my question is it a learned aptitude or skill, which you would imply it is, or is it something that sort of comes from within that you refine and work on and ultimately try to perfect?
So I think it goes both ways, right? So bless him, my father's the least entrepreneurial human being on earth, and so I definitely don't get it there, maybe from mom, but I think there's 2 things that have to happen. The internal desire to believe in something and to go for it, right? That's really all you need to do anything in life, whether it's medicine or anything else. I mean, let's be honest, being up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. studying for an exam, that's not easy to do, right? You have to have some sort of will to succeed. I think entrepreneurial stuff, I think it's overblown. I think, again, you just have to do it, and you have to strike out a few times. That's the only way to do it. I think we're so terrified of being perfectionists all day long, and we can't subject ourselves to criticism. Let it go. It's kind of like, you know what, if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. I've seen so many companies fail because they won't evolve, and I think the hardest thing people to do is to take that kind of criticism and evolve and understand that, look, this is not working, let's try it this way. And I think, again, in healthcare, the most frustrating part for most people is that sometimes things that should work don't work, and we don't know why. And you just gotta, like I said, you have to take it on the fly. So for me, again, I don't know if it was learned or what. I think it was baptism by fire, hope for the best, close your eyes and pray. And it's been working out so far, but I'm still pretty young. I still have a few things I want to check off on the list, but I think first things first. You get that mindset, I think, early in medicine that we have a different work ethic in medicine. I think it's just one of those things, we get it done, right? And I always joke, but especially on my tech side, if it doesn't happen within their working hours, it doesn't happen. So whereas in medicine, if I have something, I'll be up to 3, 4, 5 a.m. I'll get it done. I'll figure it out. And so again, I think it's a superpower, right? So that's one of the things that separates all of us, that we all kind of have in there. And I think it's one of the greatest strengths that we probably forget about.
how do you prioritize or strategize setting your price points to maximize your profits and at the same time making your products accessible to everyday people?
So I'm the worst person to ask about that question because there's no, most of the things I do, there's no business plan. There's no like, I'm going against everything every person here is probably, they're all shaking their head. None of these things were supposed to be businesses. They were like ideas that I wanted to see happen. And so for like skin medicinals, I had to negotiate with a pharmacy. So, compounding pharmacy, they like to charge $70, $80 for these compounded medications. So we had a way to getting more people onto this platform. So I'm like, look, if I bring you this many people, can you lower the price down? And most people would say no. He's got to find the right person to say yes, and that's how it was. And even now, my job, I always say, does it make a few bucks? Yeah, but the job was to make it sustainable. And that's how I think of business is. How do you create something that's sustainable? That can kind of self-fund itself and grow as it needs to grow. I think and again, I apologize to every business person in this room, but healthcare is weird. I mean, I hate thinking about profit when it comes to patients. You need to, but I think it's one of those things where it's such a delicate balance, and maybe because I've been jaded by some of the conversations I've had where they've wanted to put profits over everything. But I think first kind of figure out how you can break even. Be like, look, this is how I don't lose money. And then you figure out different ways you can make money later on. But it is a delicate balance, and that's where all these venture capital groups hate me, and they all laugh at me every single time. But it's okay. Like I said, it's you got to figure it out. But it depends on a business to business kind of opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Bhanusali, I got a quick question for you. My name is Jeffrey Patrick, and I'm a student at New York Medical College. And I'm also the co-host of the #1 business podcast at the OG Network at Madison Square Garden. And one of the questions that I like to ask the guests when they come on the show, especially particular entrepreneurs like yourself, what is your daily mindset when you wake up and go through the day? And more importantly, do you think leaders are born or are they made?
That's a good question. First of all, nice coat.
Thank you.
So what do I do every day morning when I get up? So I get up at 5 a.m. every day. I'm in the gym for about an hour. That's my peace. It's where I find my most kind of tranquility. My phone is off. I don't do anything. I think for that, it kind of recalibrates the mind. My office isn't like most offices. Again, my staff will be the first to complain about it. But I might see a couple patients and have a tech meeting here or there. I might have to come give a talk. We might have like a celebrity meeting or something we have to go do for like a project we're working on. That's part of my everyday life. I don't have 30 patients every morning, every day. I wouldn't be happy, right? My life is a little bit entrepreneurship, a little bit skincare development, a little bit patient care, a little bit human care. There's a lot of different things that are there. And so when I approach each day, I make it my own, because I don't believe anybody should ever get up every day and do anything they're not happy doing. Life is too short, right? And so you kind of structure your day to do what you feel like you want to do. And so every single day, that's how it is. And to the second part of your question, if they're born or I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I think everything in life can change. And I think, again, especially in medicine, every person who goes into medicine is a leader, because they're making that decision that they want to put other people first, right? And they'll do whatever they have to do, even though you can be a leader and still put other people first, but it's a mindset that's there. And I'm always, I think the biggest tragedy in medicine, and which I think has changed, and I know Sinai is doing a great job of encouraging it, but again, we just never thought we were capable of all these things. And we just thought that we were only supposed to do this. Should you do well in our exams? 100%. Should you go into a great residency? Yeah. But also, like I said, always think outside the box, not just Journal Club, all that. Like read TechCrunch or read like Business Insider, read all these other things. You have to have a well-rounded mind in 2019. And I think part of it is you can teach yourself whatever you want to learn. It's just a question of, do you want to learn it? So.
Sorry, over here in the middle. Hi, thank you very much for your talk. So I am British, and in the UK we can't do direct-to-consumer advertising for drugs. And so it was kind of very interesting to hear your kind of marketing influencer type perspective. One of the things that's really interesting in the UK is that whilst you can't advertise directly to consumers for drugs, you can do for apps and technologies and many digital therapeutics. And there's a really big issue at the moment where there's lots of non-evidence-based technology products being disseminated through routes because there's a bit of a loophole. So how do you reconcile using kind of the power of marketing and an influencer culture on technologies that have substantial more ramifications because of things like network effects, especially for kind of groups who have disparities or minorities? How do you kind of reconcile those two things when it comes to tech and then influencer marketing?
So this is a fun question. I just had a conversation with, I think it was CNBC or Business, I can't remember. So I went at Curology. Curology is a direct-to-consumer acne thing, but they have a bunch of non-dermatologists seeing acne patients online for convenience. I'm against it, right? I'm all for innovation, but I'm against exploiting care on behalf of the patient. And I think what's happening, a lot of these like Hims and Keeps and Romans, I'm in the press against them. Do I love the innovation? 100%. But if you have people who are being treated by either surveys or by people who are not treating those kind of patients regularly, it is kind of scary, right? For our skin medicinals, every single prescription is written by a board-certified dermatologist in their office. So the patient has to go to a derm office and see them. The idea with that one is actually really simple. I was thinking about Medicaid patients, honestly, when we did that thing. And so the cost of a medication is less than a copay for a Medicaid patient for half this stuff. So it was really like, it made complete sense. I think it spiraled a little bit crazier, and now people just use it because I think dermatologists, more than any other specialty, we're more kind of aware now of these increasing drug costs because we got hit first with them. But even then, I think you have to, like, it's this delicate balance of innovating the right way. I think you have to be careful. When you skip steps, people get hurt, and you can't, just because you want simplicity, you can't make that okay. And so I've been very vocal. Actually, in our hair stem project, I'm actually launching, I think this week, we're undercutting Hims and Keeps and Roman for oral finasteride, which I'm not a big fan of, to be super honest with you. But the idea is that if you want to get that medication at a cheap price, you have to go see a doctor, a dermatologist that knows that field well, knows the side effects, and can talk about it. And I think that's how you kind of do it, because, as a physician, you know what's up, right? As a tech marketing company, you don't care. You literally look at an Excel sheet every single day, and you're like, profit, 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 profit. That's why I want every single doctor out there to start innovating and building and creating. I want them to be leading a lot of these companies. Still manage your office, figure out how you can balance it, but people will find loopholes. When there's money, I think private equity in dermatology is a great example. There's a big New York Times article where these private equity groups are buying out all these derm practices, and then everybody becomes a number on a sheet, right? The biopsy numbers are going up, all that stuff. That worries me. Again, I'm a human being, right? So innovation's a powerful tool, but you got to do it the right way. And I think being healthcare providers and physicians first, that's how you kind of do it the right way.
We'll take 2 more questions. One more. Wait, this one first. Wait, him. Right here.
My name is Clayton Banks from Silicon Harlem, and I had a question, just a 2-part question. One is technology that you're referring to and some of the new technologies that are coming. What are some of the technologies that you're excited about, like 3D or virtual stuff? That's one part. And the second question is, in terms of skin color, are there disparities in what you do as it relates to skin color? I'm just curious.
2 questions near and dear to my heart. So first part, I think, I work on a really weird project. So to give you context that you guys can do anything, a bunch of NYU grad students created this tattoo. It's a reversible permanent tattoo. So you tattoo it, you take this fun little enzyme marker, and you trace over, and it disappears. It stays forever or it goes away, doesn't matter. Started by a bunch of grad students. So listen, if they can do it, anybody can. But a lot of cool technologies are coming. There was one that we're working on where for full body exams. So I always say I'm limited by human error, right? If I'm doing a full body exam looking for skin cancers, I only can see what I can see, right? I can't see 3D. There's a company that they're building this thing where you go in, you kind of strip down naked, you have a drone fly around you, and it takes thousands of pictures in real time. And then it can tell you to the 0.001 millimeter if any mole's gotten larger or even one baby shade darker. And it's interesting because there's a lot of AI-powered and I actually love AI. I think it's fantastic. However, AI should never replace. It should supplement, right? And I think in a context like that, if I can use my human eye, also have this cool device, that's the rub, right? Whereas if somebody's like, hey, we can get down to 88% accuracy, that this is as good as a dermatologist, that's still a good number of people who are missing very important things, and that worries me, right? So I think that kind of technology, that as we get more AI-powered things and virtual reality, another project we're working on is teaching. I'm big on having dermatologists be more comfortable with procedures. So I have a laser company. We're working on me wearing GoPros while I laser things, and the residents and med students wearing virtual reality goggles, and they're in the room with me. Like, I think it's like cool stuff we can start doing. It's a lot of fun opportunities out there. Second part of your question, so I'm on the National Skin of Color Society board, so I think there's a huge disparity there, and I chirp about it quite often. I think we were talking, I think with Mary earlier, 2050, there's no more minority in this country. The minority will be the majority. Over 50% of people will be some sort of mix, right? And so the problem is all these clinical trials and things like that, if they hit 10, 15% ethnic, which is anything with any shade, then they're happy. I have firsthand done research where I've seen that some people respond to certain things based on, what their ethnic origin is. They might not respond to this drug. All that's crazy. Think about how many billions of dollars we waste giving the wrong people the wrong medication, right? And like it's bizarre to me that that's not been addressed yet. We have a fun, again, I'm on Michigan State. I'm like their unofficial chief innovation officer. I refuse to take a title, but one of my projects with them is digitizing clinical trials completely. I want that patient in Detroit to have the same access to care for clinical trials as the person in Grand Rapids or East Lansing or wherever it is. And I think we have something like 50 health systems that are starting to crawl into this mix of something similar. And I think, again, that you have to think about that stuff, because there is, when I was talking about the clinical trial part of it, again, if I'm writing a $50,000 a year drug, I better be giving it to the right person. And right now, we don't have that data. And we kind of think we do, but we don't. And there's a reason why certain times a slam dunk medication doesn't work on the one person, and one that I have no faith is actually going to do anything solves another problem. So I think, ethnic skin is a big part of what the future of healthcare really is shaping. And I'm fortunate to see, at least in dermatology, we are trying to make our little dent, but unfortunately, I think we need to do a lot more. So hopefully we can get there.
Final question.
So thanks so much for sharing kind of your life's arc. So a lot of us in this room are medical students or medical trainees. Unfortunately, Sinai in New York City does support a lot of innovation. We have Sinai Biodesign and a lot of students working on startups and things like that. In your experience, what is the best way for medical trainees to balance becoming a really good doctor while at the same time working on kind of these external things? And what perspective or what kind of mental framework do you have to balance those two?
So I think, always doctor first. Again, that's the problem is if you kind of skip steps in medical education, patients suffer, right? So you got to always put your schoolwork and all that stuff, first and foremost. I think what you're doing is it, right? Coming to things like this, networking, talking to people, throwing things out there. I mean, it depends, right? You can spend all your day watching Netflix and TV, or you can do other things. And I think balance comes from what makes you happy. For me, I love building things. Like I said, like our EMR, it's in 50 offices. That was like a joke project. I just kind of got angry one day, like, let's build something. It's in 50 offices in like 4 months. That's bizarre to me. Like, I don't really understand how that works. But it's one of those things where, I just started spending a lot of my free time working on it. And skin medicinal, same thing. I just started, while I was seeing patients, it just kept gnawing at me and doing it. When I was a med student or resident, I would just, whenever I had free time, I just started, chipping away. And I think in a weird way, it just gives you a different perspective of medicine and how you treat your patients, right? Because, all right, so simple idea. I always joke the best thing, if anybody ever wanted to make $1 billion company, just to go with every chairman in any hospital, just walk around for a day and ask them what's inefficient, right? And then go to another hospital, be the same issues, right? You just have to start looking for different things and then solve those problems and figure out how to balance it within your normal work-life balance and be like, hey, if we did this, could we do this? And maybe ask a Sinai if they have some seed money or something like that, or a venture arm. And if not them, there's a lot of places in the city that would support it. And I think you just have to kind of figure out where you want to waste your time. And for me, I like to waste time doing something pseudo-productive. But that being said, Netflix is not always a bad idea either.
Before I call Omar to the podium, who's also a co-founder for DIH, can we all give Dr. Bhanusali a round of applause, please?